Picture this. You're a Roman senator strolling through the Suburra, the seedy pleasure district of ancient Rome. It's noisy, smoky, filled with drunks, gamblers, and the kind of characters who make you want to clutch your toga a little tighter. Then suddenly, out of the corner of your eye, you spot someone in a dingy brothel. Just another prostitute, right? Cheap makeup, dim candlelight, nothing unusual, but then, bam, your blood freezes. Because under that smudged eyeliner and cheap perfume, you recognize her face. Not just any woman, not just any courtesan. It's Valeria Messalina, the Empress of Rome, wife of Emperor Claudius. Yeah, you heard that right. The most powerful woman in the empire, sneaking out of the palace at night to, wait for it, compete with prostitutes for who could outlast the most men. Sounds insane. Oh, it gets crazier. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't some tragic royal forced into shame. Nope. This was her choice, her thrill, her personal sport. Messalina wanted to win at debauchery. She was determined to prove she could beat every professional in Rome at their own game. And you thought you'd already heard the wildest stories about Roman decadence. Forget Caligula. Compared to Messalina, he starts looking like a Sunday school teacher. But let's rewind. The year is 38 CE. Rome is throwing the party of the decade, an imperial wedding. Messalina is just 15 years old, a glowing picture of Roman nobility. Blonde hair, porcelain skin, aristocratic bloodlines stretching back generations. The perfect bride for Claudius, who was 13 years older, brilliant but mocked for his limp and speech issues. Modern medicine would call it cerebral palsy. To the Roman people, the match looked perfect. She was beautiful, fertile, aristocratic. He was grateful and eager. Together, they symbolized exactly what the empire wanted: legitimacy, heirs, divine blood. But Rome had rules. Women, especially empresses, were supposed to embody virtue, pure, dignified, above even the faintest whiff of scandal. Think about it. Even rumors about an empress could rattle the entire empire. So when Messalina smiled sweetly at religious ceremonies, bore Claudius 2 children, and played the part of the perfect imperial wife, everyone sighed in relief. She fit the role flawlessly, at least on the surface. Because behind the polished marble walls of the palace, a different Messalina was waking up. And trust me, her double life would make even the most jaded Roman aristocrats choke on their wine. It started small. Palace servants noticed odd things. She dismissed her guards late at night. She slipped into plain clothes, sneaking out under fake identities. At first, it seemed harmless, a young woman looking for excitement in a city that never slept. But what began as innocent rebellion quickly morphed into something darker, something calculated. Messalina wasn't just wandering. She was studying, watching prostitutes, learning their tricks, memorizing their clients. This wasn't curiosity, it was strategy. And soon, very soon, Rome would witness her first shocking performance. The year is 40 CE. Rome is lit up for Saturnalia, the wildest festival of the year. Imagine Mardi Gras plus Halloween plus Vegas, but with even fewer rules. Masters served slaves, the city pulsed with music, gambling, and booze. Basically, anything went. While Claudius was busy doing the emperor thing, attending ceremonies, being the respectable head of state, Messalina slipped away. Not as an empress, not as a noblewoman, but disguised as just another Roman girl looking for some late-night thrills. And where did she go? Straight into the Suburra. Now, here's where it stops being cute rebellion and starts being jaw-dropping scandal. Because Messalina didn't just go to watch. She didn't go to blend in with the people. No, she went into a brothel, knocked on the door, looked the keeper in the eye and said, "Give me a room, I'll work tonight." Think about that for a second. The Empress of Rome, the woman supposed to embody purity and dignity, volunteering to be a prostitute for strangers. And the brothel owner, he had no idea who she was. To him, she was just some thrill-seeking aristocrat slumming it. But when she started, oh, she blew the roof off the place. Messalina wasn't just trying it. She went full-on competitor mode, client after client after client, so many that the professionals started whispering to each other in shock. This wasn't an empress having fun. This was a woman possessed. By dawn, the other prostitutes had collapsed, exhausted. They went home, done, finished. But not Messalina. She refused to stop. She demanded more men, more challenges. Until finally the brothel keeper had to throw her out because, get this, there were literally no more clients left. And in that moment, Messalina found her obsession. Within months, she wasn't just sneaking out for fun. She built a whole system. Trusted servants helped smuggle her out. Disguises, false names, safe houses. She created her own underground network, not for politics, not for money, but for sex. But wait, it gets even crazier, because being a prostitute for a night wasn't enough anymore. No, Messalina wanted to prove herself. She turned it into a competition. She started challenging Rome's most famous courtesans. Big names, the kind of women senators and generals bragged about. Messalina would bet piles of gold that she could outlast them all in endurance contests. And you know what? People showed up to watch. Crowds of wealthy Romans gathered like it was the Colosseum. Except instead of gladiators with swords, it was the Empress in the flesh. The most infamous. A face-off in 41 CE against Scylla, the city's most legendary prostitute. Rules, simple. Whoever could take the most clients in one night, wins. Imagine the scene. A packed house, nobles placing bets, whispers flying. The emperor's wife standing there like she's entering the arena. Scylla paced herself, smart, professional, seasoned. By sunrise, she had hit 25 clients. She collapsed, done, convinced she had victory in the bag. But Messalina, she wasn't even winded. She just kept going. And going. Reports say she topped 30 men before finally stopping, not because she was tired, but because they ran out of volunteers. Silence, total silence, no cheers, no applause, just horrified realization. They weren't watching entertainment, they were watching something darker, something obsessive. And here's the kicker, she loved it. The humiliation wasn't shame, it was fuel. The bigger the contrast between her daytime role as regal empress and her nighttime role as sex worker, the stronger the thrill. Rome thought it had seen everything. It hadn't. Messalina had just gotten started. So, you thought the brothel contests were the peak of the madness? Nope. That was just the warm-up. Because in 42 CE, Messalina crossed a line so bold, so outrageous, that even jaded Romans had to whisper, "Is she trying to bring down the empire?" She didn't just sneak out anymore. She didn't just compete with courtesans. She built something, a whole operation, a criminal empire, dressed up as a high society club. Picture this, a luxurious villa near the Campus Martius. From the outside, totally respectable. Marble columns, lush gardens, the perfect spot for aristocratic gatherings. But behind those polished doors, Rome's most dangerous brothel. And the staff? Forget low-class prostitutes. Messalina recruited aristocratic women, noble-born wives, daughters of senators, women who never imagined they'd end up in a place like this. How did she convince them? Easy, she didn't. She forced them. Blackmail, threats. Work for me, or your family loses everything. Nobody could say no. Now here's where her genius, or insanity, depending on how you see it, really shines. This wasn't just about sex. It was about power. Every man who walked through those doors was someone important. Senators, generals, rich merchants, people who shaped the empire, and every single encounter was recorded. Conversations, secrets, confessions, weaknesses. She built an intelligence network out of shame. Imagine the FBI, but run by an empress who thrived on humiliation. Suddenly, she knew who was planning to oppose imperial policies, which generals were loyal, which merchants were skimming off taxes. She had dirt on everyone. And the worst part, most of them didn't even realize it. They thought they were at an exclusive party. A bit of fun, maybe even a forbidden thrill. Only later did they discover, oh no, that wasn't just a random noblewoman, that was the Empress herself. Can you picture that terror? Realizing you'd been trapped. Realizing your career, your reputation, maybe even your life, was now in her hands. That was Messalina's weapon. Not swords, not legions. Shame. And it worked. Senators who once argued in the forum suddenly went quiet. Military leaders who once stood tall now bent the knee. Merchants who should have been punished for fraud mysteriously got protection. Foreign ambassadors even noticed something was off. Decisions in Rome made no sense. Promotions went to unqualified favorites. Trade deals tilted strangely, all because the Empress was pulling strings through her underground empire. Rome wasn't just being governed from the palace anymore, it was being run from a brothel. And yet, for Messalina, even that wasn't enough. Because by 44 CE, she got bored of secrets. She didn't just want control in the shadows, she wanted to humiliate Rome's elite in broad daylight. And what came next? Honestly, it's the stuff of nightmares. All right, buckle up, because if you thought Messalina's secret brothel was bad, you're not ready for this. By 44 CE, secrecy was boring to her. She didn't just want control through whispers and shame in back rooms. She wanted spectacle. She wanted Rome's entire ruling class crawling on their knees, literally. So how do you force senators, generals, and their wives into public humiliation? Easy, you call it religion. Messalina started hosting festivals in honor of various gods. Invitations were mandatory. Skip them, and you weren't just being rude, you were defying the Empress, risking accusations of impiety. So the nobility came, dressed in their best, expecting a formal ritual. At first, everything looked normal. Prayers, sacrifices, incense, the dignified stuff. But then, the lines started to blur. Messalina introduced ancient practices, ritual dances, exotic performances. Step by step, she twisted a pious ceremony into something far more sinister. And before anyone realized it, they were trapped. Senators who thought they were attending a holy rite suddenly found themselves stripping down. Wives of Roman nobles were pushed into sacred acts they couldn't refuse. The whole thing slid from ritual to orgy, and by then it was too late to back out. Because here's the thing, once you were in, you were compromised, and Messalina knew it. She didn't just orchestrate chaos, she carefully directed it. Imagine her sitting on a throne, watching, mocking, commentating. Political rivals who once defied her in the Senate now forced to degrade themselves in front of their peers. Entire reputations destroyed in one night. And she was clever about it. She didn't need executions. She didn't need assassinations. Humiliation was a cleaner weapon. A senator stripped of dignity in front of colleagues wasn't a threat anymore. He was broken. Forever. But the darkest part, she dragged families into it. Aristocratic parents had to bring their children, yes, their kids, because Messalina claimed authenticity required youth. Teenagers, raised to obey the Empress, found themselves pulled into ceremonies that would scar them for life. Imagine the psychological trap. Parents couldn't protect their kids without exposing themselves. Leaders couldn't complain without admitting what they'd done. Everyone was tangled in her web. Foreign diplomats started noticing the shift. Roman officials, once confident, proud, unshakable, now looked nervous, submissive, distracted. Rome's ruling class had been psychologically broken. Not by war, not by famine, but by an empress who weaponized shame. And yet, as horrific as that was, Messalina still wasn't done. She had one last unthinkable move left, something so outrageous it didn't just scandalize the city, it threatened to collapse the entire empire. Okay, this is where the story goes from scandalous to flat-out insane. It's 48 CE, Emperor Claudius is away in Ostia, handling something boring but important, grain shipments for the city. Business as usual. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Messalina decides it's time for her grand finale. And what does she do? She gets married. Yes, married. Not secretly, not symbolically. A real Roman wedding. White veil, witnesses, contracts, priests, everything. But here's the kicker. She's still legally married to Claudius. And her new husband. A handsome young senator named Gaius Silius. Think about that for a second. The Empress of Rome, the wife of the emperor, staging a full-on wedding with another man while her husband is still alive and ruling. In Roman law, that wasn't just scandal, that was treason. And it wasn't a quiet elopement either. This was a festival, multi-day orgy packed with aristocrats, nobles, and anyone too compromised to say no. Everyone drank, laughed, partied, like they were celebrating a new emperor and empress. Because that's exactly what Messalina believed she was doing. She started calling Silius her husband, herself his empress. She wasn't playing anymore, she was acting like Claudius was already replaced. Some reports even say she began issuing orders in Silius's name, preparing for a coronation. Can you imagine the delusion? She really thought she could just swap emperors, like Rome was her private soap opera. And poor Silius. At first, he probably thought he'd won the jackpot, the most powerful woman in the empire choosing him. But quickly, the dream became a nightmare. Because once the wedding happened, there was no way out. He wasn't her lover anymore, he was her pawn. And if Claudius found out, his head would roll right alongside hers. Spoiler, Claudius did find out. His loyal freedman, terrified of what Messalina was pulling, rushed to him in Ostia. At first, he didn't believe it. My wife, married, while I'm still alive, impossible. But then the evidence stacked up. Witnesses, documents, official contracts. The truth was undeniable. And suddenly, Claudius realized he wasn't just dealing with a personal betrayal. He was staring down the barrel of a potential civil war. What came next was swift, brutal, and unforgettable. So picture the scene. Claudius rushes back to Rome, his loyal guards at his side. He's pale, shaken, but there's fire in his eyes. He's just been told his wife, the Empress of Rome, married another man in broad daylight. Not an affair, not whispers, a wedding. At first, he can't believe it. This is Claudius we're talking about. Awkward, hesitant, often underestimated. He doesn't want to act rashly, but then, one by one, witnesses step forward. Senators, servants, priests, all saying the same thing. Yes, Caesar, she did it. She's married to Silius. And just like that, denial shatters. Claudius realizes this isn't just a personal betrayal, it's treason, a direct threat to his throne. He storms into Rome. His soldiers surround Messalina's garden, where, get this, she's still celebrating. Drinking, laughing, acting like she's already queen beside Silius. The party ends in a heartbeat. Now, here's where accounts differ. Some say Messalina tried to run to Claudius, throwing herself at his feet, begging for forgiveness. Others say she stood proud, defiant, as if daring him to strike. But all agree on one thing. In that moment, she finally understood her web of blackmail, humiliation, and manipulation couldn't save her anymore, because shame only works on the living. And Claudius had soldiers with swords. The order was swift, execution. But here's the eerie twist. Claudius didn't even deliver it himself. He couldn't bear to face her. Instead, he sent his freedmen, Narcissus and Evadus, to finish the job. They found Messalina in the gardens, trembling but still trying to stall, asking for one last chance to speak with the emperor. It never came. According to Tacitus, she was handed a dagger, told to do the honorable thing, end it herself. She couldn't. Her courage failed. In the end, an officer drove the blade home. Just like that, the most scandalous woman in Roman history was gone. But Rome wasn't finished with her yet. Claudius ordered her name erased, her statues smashed, her memory damned by the ultimate Roman punishment. Damnatio memoriae. Official erasure, speaking her name became treason. The empire tried to pretend she had never existed. An empress who once controlled Rome through lust and shame was herself destroyed by the cold machinery of power. Her death was brutal, but her legacy, unforgettable. And just like that, she was gone. Messalina, the teenage bride who became the most feared woman in Rome, cut down not by enemies abroad, not by assassins in the dark, but by her own husband's order. But here's the thing, Rome didn't just kill her, they tried to erase her. Damnatio memoriae. Her name scratched off monuments, her statues smashed to dust, her memory officially forbidden. Why? Because what she represented was too dangerous to keep alive. See, Messalina wasn't just scandal, She wasn't just lust and madness. She was proof that shame, sex, and blackmail could be more powerful than legions and armies. That one woman, playing the system, could bring an entire empire to its knees without ever drawing a sword. Think about it. Senators silenced, not by fear of death, but fear of exposure. Generals bent not by military defeat, but by humiliation. Whole families trapped in webs of blackmail. That's why she terrified Rome even more than Caligula ever did. And maybe that's why her story still shocks us. Because deep down, we recognize the truth. Power doesn't always wear armor or carry weapons. Sometimes it hides behind a smile. Sometimes it seduces. Sometimes it shames. Messalina played the game too hard, too openly, and in the end, it destroyed her. But the echoes of her life never really disappeared. Even 2,000 years later, we're still telling her story, because it forces us to ask, how much of history has been shaped not by battles or politics, but by secrets whispered in the dark? So next time you hear someone say, Rome fell because of barbarians at the gates, remember Messalina. Remember the woman who almost broke the empire from the inside. And ask yourself, would you have survived in her Rome?